Hello, good evening. Chris Kolmorgen is a student, a writer, and a lover of all things weird. This semester, he attended the International Conference for the Fantastic and the Arts, where he got to present student research, sitting next to a scholar from Oxford. As his favorite professor once said, he is not a serial killer, but he could probably play one in a movie. Chris Kolmorgen presenting from the Problem of Evil class, the Chronicles of Narnia and the Origins of Evil.
Hello. So I wanted to thank Dr. Auld first for giving me this opportunity and pushing me this semester because this is my freshman year. And she's had me present at an academic conference and now this honors symposium. So thank you, Dr. Auld. So, The Chronicles of Narnia and the Origins of Evil. So this is one of my favorite books. And when you think of Narnia, you usually think of the wardrobe or the lion. And the lion Aslan is a character that is traditionally interpreted as being an allegorical figure of God. And when you think of allegory, you usually have a figure who represents God and a figure who represents Satan. But the interesting things about the Chronicles of Narnia is that it doesn't have a clear Satan figure. What it has is the White Witch. So how did evil enter Narnia? It came into Narnia with the character of Jadis, the White Witch, and she came into Narnia at the world's inception. And that's in The Magician's Nephew. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we find out that she is a descendant of Lilith, a character from biblical mythology. And Lilith is a character who is related to Adam. She was one of his wives, and she wanted equality with Adam, and because of this, she was cast out. Unfortunately, that means that she had to go into the desert and become the mother of demons. So, that is who Jadis is descended from. Here on the left, we have an image of Lilith. Notice the snake twisting around her body as the figure of Satan. And on the right, we have Jadis as she appears in The Magician's Nephew. What's really interesting about Jadis in The Magician's Nephew is that she is tempting a young boy in order to gain power in Narnia. And this is something she does in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as well, where Edmund comes into the world and she uses Turkish delight and promises of power in order to ensnare him. And an interesting aspect of her character is that she says she wants him for a son, but this isn't for maternal purposes, it's because she wants an heir to her throne. And this is a subversion of typical female, motherly, maternal roles that Lewis is projecting onto his characters. Here's the White Witch as she appears in the 2005 film, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. As the character of Aslan comes into play, her power gradually starts to weaken, and the film chose to interpret this through an instance of visual rhetoric with her crown slowly melting as her power faded. So on the left you see her as the film begins, in the middle of the film, and the end before the last battle occurs. And an interesting thing about the character of Aslan is, what one critic says, is that Lewis did not toss a coin to determine his god's gender. He makes Aslan deliberately and thoroughly male. Female revolt against Aslan, therefore, is doubly threatening, and so the witches are his most powerful and terrifying enemies. In order to defeat the White Witch, Aslan, you can see him as he's depicted here, and the quote, when she's finally defeated, is, then Lion and Witch had rolled over together, but with the witch underneath. Critics have traditionally interpreted this as being the patriarchal model being introduced back into the text, bringing a semblance of order into the world And this says a lot about Lewis's views of femininity. So witches, or descendants of Lilith, are the main antagonists of the Narnia series. In the silver chair, we have the Lady of the Green Kirtle. She's very reminiscent of Jadis, and some critics even think she is the same character projected onto another book. Somehow, I don't know. But an interesting thing about her is that she turns into a snake when she's finally being defeated, and that is what enables the prince, who she has captured, to finally lop off the snake's head. And he quotes that he's glad she changed form into this snake because it gave him a way to defeat her that was in line with his knightly sense of right and wrong and how to treat women. And that says a very interesting thing about Lewis, because it says that physical manifestations of femininity are what matter more than their moral compasses being in tune, because the Lady of the Green Kirtle is a character who wants to take over the world. But what about Daughters of Eve? So we've explored what Daughters of Lilith are in the Chronicles of Narnia. In the last battle, the character of Susan, one of the 4 Pevensey children who enter the world in the first book, is denied access to Aslan's country when her siblings pass on to that realm. And the reason for this is because she's interested in nothing nowadays except nylons and lipstick and invitations. Critics talk about this in the viewpoint of her discovering sex and maturing, and this is what ends up ruling her out as a candidate to make it into Aslan's country. And one critic, Craig, says that in a different kind of fiction, Susan would have been an object of commiseration, not someone to be sneered at simply for allowing the maturing process to take its natural course. So we've explored how Lewis is interested in femininity in his portrayals of evil in the Chronicles of Narnia, but is there a figure in the stories that represents the antithesis of Aslan? And it's true that there is. The character of Tash comes in the 7th book, and this is a demonic figure reminiscent of descriptions of Satan in the series. But what's interesting about him is that when Aslan is described as not being a tame lion, he is described as a character who can be summoned into the world. So the quote at the bottom is, "Thou hast called me into Narnia, Rijda Tarkhan. Here I am, what hast thou to say?" So this character can only enter Narnia when called upon. So Aslan is the embodiment of all that is good, and Tash is the embodiment of all that is evil. So evil exists in Narnia because it has been called into being by man. Just as it came into the world through Diggory, bringing the White Witch into Narnia and the magician's nephew, all the evils visited upon that land were brought by men. And this is particularly interesting when viewed through Lewis's work as a theologian and Christian leader. And that's it.